Now you would think, what is Andy doing with this wiring harness here? What is he up to tonight? Guys, welcome back to another video here from the Off-Grid Garage in sunny, hot Australia. Even it is late night show, it is still nice and warm. We are at the end of spring down here in Australia and we have 250 amps outside. Thanks to the new solar installation here on the Off-Grid Garage, on the shed and on the carport. But tonight, well, tonight we have to say goodbye to this device, the JK-BMS. It is a bit sad actually, it is a bit sad. The JK-BMS is not longer the king of the BMSs, the jack of all trades. As you know, I'm the biggest fan on earth of the JK-BMS with its active 2 amp balancer, 200 amp of switching current, and it can also talk to the Victron system. But now I found something better. Better, smarter, more powerful than the JK-BMS. And maybe it is time now to say goodbye to the JK and go with something different. Are you ready? Let me introduce to you the 250 amp JBD Smart BMS. JBD? Jabata! Hang on, let me try this again. Let me introduce to you the 250A JBD Smart BMS. It is the Jabata. The JBD! Andy, what is going on now? Why do you prefer a JBD BMS over the JK-BMS? What is going on here? Well, it is the 250A JBD Smart BMS 4S for lithium iron phosphate batteries, but it is the special Muller Energy edition. Okay, they are not using these dots here on this name, but it is actually Muller Energy. And look at this beast. What a BMS. Look at this massive heatsink on the back. And here we've got 3 terminals. And they are connected with a nice thick copper bus bar. And we've got an M8. We've got an should have better prepared this. We've got a nice M8 bolt here with a threaded insert in the copper. How good is that? Oh, that feels already very good. Well, this contact area, I like it. But now you would say, Andy, the JBD BMS has only a passive balancer on board and it balances with only 100, 150, 160 milliamps. Yeah, and this is exactly the case with this BMS here. It has a passive balancer, 150, 160 milliamps. But why is it better than the JK-BMS then? Well, it has something to do with this wiring harness here. Okay, let's start with the easy part. We've got 5 ring terminals here for the negative battery 1, 2, 3 and 4. Just for a 4S battery, right? Totally standard. We've got a connector here for the BMS. Clicks in there. Still nothing special. Then we have this other branch here going from the wireless harness to this little fellow here. Yeah, I guess we have seen this before, right? Yeah, this is my demo model. Okay, so, we have now connected an active balancer to the JBD BMS here. Well, it feels like we have been there before, right? It feels like we have all seen this. These active balancers are great, but if you connect them permanently to a battery, not so great anymore, because they're causing an imbalance when the battery is discharged. So in fact, I made a ton of videos about this and showed how these balancers work. They only should be turned on if the battery is almost fully charged. And basically, the internal balancer would turn on anyway. But we all know these ones turn on here as soon as they are connected to a battery. Well, not so much the balancer which is coming with the BMS. What a trick. I just replaced the toast one with this one. And this looks pretty much the same as the balancer before, right? Well, as you may remember from the videos I made about these active balancers here, they have this soldering bridge here, which is called run. And as long as these two contacts are connected, the balancer actually runs. If you have a second look at this one here, you can see this bridge is not there anymore. And we have a socket, a contact here. So this is exactly where this little cable plugs in, like this. And the other end actually connects to the BMS. Have a look at this port here, which is only available on the Muller edition, of, my presentation. Only available on the Muller Energy version of the JBD Smart BMS. Yeah, that's better. Well, let's have a quick look at the interfaces of this special BMS. So from the right, we have the balance cables plugged in already. We've got a Bluetooth module, which is, here's my, found it. Yeah, Bluetooth module. Then we have the temperature sensors, NTC, 2 of them. And the next one is our little guy. And this is the 2-pole cable, and this connects to our BMS. The SW port on the BMS here, oh, there's another piece of cable, a blue and white one. The end of this cable here is just bare wires. And as long as this pair of cable is open, the discharge functionality of the BMS is disabled. You remember these 2 little switches we have in the app for the BMSs, yeah? Charging and discharging, and you can turn them manually on and off. This is exactly what this cable does here. And I'll show you this in a second in the app and explain what this is good for. And last but not least, the communication. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have any CAN functionality. It is just for a 12-volt battery system, so it doesn't really need a CAN functionality. But we have the RS485. And here again, we've got an existing cable which plugs into the RS485. Bang! I'm almost sure this one here is actually a heating port for a heating pad of your battery. See, it says H there on the PCB. I think this is a heating port. I'll confirm this and let you know. Well, and then we have this RS485 cable going into this harness here. And this is actually a pretty long cable. Look how long this cable is. This is at least, if not even longer. Okay, let's put this together again. A bit of Velcro. Because on this end here goes the smart battery LCD display. Just plugs here in on the underside. This is the whole setup. Okay, let me quickly connect this one to our 4S battery here and I'll show you how this works. It is amazing. Okay. This is as good as it gets in this late night show. So, first of all, have a look at the display. Look at this. Gives us the state of charge here, the current, the voltage, the temperature, and the time to empty. So it actually calculates how long your battery will last until it's empty with the current load. Well, because we don't have anything connected, it shows 999 hours. And down here you can see we've got a page 2 and page 3. And this is actually a touch screen. So you can go to page number 2. And here you can see the discharge button is off. And I'm not able to turn it on. See, it pops up green for a moment. But it doesn't stay. See, it doesn't stay. It gives us our remaining ampere hours, the max temperature, the min temperature. BMS set, not sure what that is for. The status is normal, there's no over voltage or over temperature, over current situation. The battery has done 1 cycle, and page number 3 gives us all the single cell voltages now. And you can also cycle through these screens by pressing the button here. I like it, that is very good. So remember, this BMS is for a 12-volt battery, and most of the time you use them in RVs or boats or something. So it's very handy to have this display here somewhere, well, almost 1.5 meters away from the BMS, from your battery, and you can check all the parameters, everything. Okay, but wait, there's more. And I want to show you how this works. Of course we have reflection here. See these two wires here for the on-off switch? And the discharge switch wouldn't stick. So watch what happened if I put them together. Look at this. Discharging turns on. See that? Cable is off. It turns off. On. There it is. It is on and off again. Why would you want this feature? Well, if you connect a switch to these cables, you can disable discharging of the BMS. Then you can connect your big fat Peter inverter without using a resistor. You just connect it to the C- and the positive of your battery. You don't need to be afraid of a spark anymore. Yeah, you may remember the Muller battery here, the prototype I have tested for them. We will actually get the production type very soon, and this one still had the DALI BMS installed, but it also came with this discharge switch down here. And this is exactly what Muller Energy does with their batteries. They install this discharge switch. And as you know, I've used this battery a lot in my wheelbarrow together with the Peter inverter here, and I'm using this with the 175 amp Anderson connector. And when you plug this in, it gets a really big spark, and I'm really afraid of that. But now I press the button on the battery and turn off the discharge function of the BMS. And this is exactly what this function is for. Yeah, on, off. I'll just use some crocodile clamps here to connect this together. So the switch actually stays on then. There we go. Okay, so let's connect to the Bluetooth function of the BMS, and we can use the Xiaoxiang app again, and it is this one. Oh, that was quick. This one here, 250 amps, that's the one. Because it's a JBD BMS, it just connects with the Xiaoxiang, but I think there is another app you can use for that as well, but the Xiaoxiang is fine. So here we can see the exact same data as we have already seen on the display. And here I can show you the charge and discharge switch on the app. So we try the charge switch first. It's off in the app. There, it is off in the display as well. And if I turn it back on the display, here, it turns on again on the app as well. Off. Look at the app. On. Off. On. I like this. I could do this all day long. Yeah, you have already seen I have turned around the balancer here because the LED is on the underside. So as soon as this orange light goes on, the balancer actually gets active. So how do you actually activate the balancer now with this BMS? Because as I said, the BMS has still got the 150 milliamp passive balancer, but we also want to use the active balancer. Even if it is connected to the battery, it is not turned on. Okay, let's go into our parameter view. And here we can see the usual parameters of a JBD BMS, over voltage release, and all this kind of stuff. We have seen this 100 million trillion times. So let's go a little bit further down. Here, balance turn on voltage, 3.2 volts it sits, but the balance precision is on 10 millivolt. And if we have another look on the display here, we can see we are within 2 millivolt deviation. Let's use our light bulbs here and create a bit of imbalance in this battery. So I'm just going to discharge cell number 1. Discharge on. And immediately you cannot see shit because we have got a reflection exactly in the location where the stupid LED is on this balancer. I'll do it again. Cell number 1. We are discharging cell number 1, right? Okay, discharging right now. and the balancer turns on. Look at this. Now the voltages are rising again over 10 millivolt deviation and the balancer kicks in. And you can also see on the app here, the little green B on cell number 3 now. It is actually passive balancing cell number 3 as well until everything is under 10 millivolt deviation. Both active and passive balancer are controlled through the settings in the app. Isn't that exactly what we always wanted? Okay, I have now connected the charger to the positive of the battery and the C- of the BMS. And I've set 14.2 volts as the maximum voltage, 21 amps, and start charging. So we should see the, and we can see the balancer turns on straight away because I have set 3.2 volts as the balance start voltage, which is totally stupid, but this was just for demonstration purposes. So we go actually ahead and set this one to 3.45 volts. And you could already see that the balancer actually turns on while we are charging and also while we didn't charge. And the JBD BMS has a function called charge balance. And I'm always a big fan of turning this charge balance off, because we also want the balancer to be active when there's no charge going into our battery. Otherwise the charging would stop and the balancer wouldn't do anything because there's no current going in. But there's still an imbalance between the cells. So always turn off charge balance. Okay, so let's scroll all the way down almost. And we set this one to 3.45, confirm. And we also want this one to go down to 5 millivolt deviation, right? We want to do a good balancing. And you can already see the balancer has turned off now because we have not reached 3.45 volts. And if we go back and have a look at the cell voltages, we can see we are at 3.4 volts only. So it may take a moment to actually fully charge this battery. It claims we are at 100% state of charge, but it is still taking energy. Okay, I'll be right back once one of the battery cells reaches 3.45 volts. Ah yeah, well, I got you here. Go into the menu, go into the function settings, and there you can see the charge balance function. Make sure to turn this one off. Okay, so we are now close to 3.45 volts with cell number 3, and we have 26 millivolt deviation already. Still charging with 21 amps. And you can see this on the display here as well. 20.65, what the BMS measures. Cool. 3449. Come on, 1 millivolt more. There it goes. Ooh, the balancing has kicked in and we can see the light is flashing on the active balancer. Okay, now it is steady. It's only for a few seconds until the voltage is a bit higher than 3.45 volts. And now you can see cell number 3 is balanced. And here's cell number 3. 1, 2, 3. That's the white cable. And we should see some kind of 350 milliamps coming out of the cell number 3. So, and if we now disconnect the active balancer, we should actually still see the passive balancer working on this cell, right? Come on. Yep, there we go. Around 100 milliamps. That's the passive balancer inside the BMS. And we plug the active one back in. And immediately we can see almost 400 milliamp of balance current. Perfect. So cell number 3 has now reached 3.51 volts. And you can see the amps. No, you can't. So 800 milliamp balance current now. This is the passive balancer of the BMS, the 100 milliamps plus 700 milliamps, 760. So it's rising. Because we've got a 102 millivolt deviation and it's still rising. Still charging with 18 amps. Because it looks like we've got a bit of imbalance here in this battery pack. Okay, we have now reached 3.55 almost. And balancing is 1.1 amps. but we are still charging with 17 amps into the battery, so I guess we will see a overvoltage disconnect of the BMS fairly soon. Okay, 3.64 volts, and we are turning off. We are 1.9 amps balance current. Nice. And it should turn off every moment. 3.65, there it is, charging, turns off immediately. But now you can see the strength of the active balancer. It is still balancing. Look at this. It is still balancing. 1.5 amps. So as soon as battery number 3 goes under 3.55, the BMS turns the charger back on and the new cycle starts. Almost 2 amps balance current. And we can also see the status here, cell over voltage. See, it turns red and turns off charging. So you can monitor the same status on the display as well. That is very good. That is very cool. Okay, now it turns back on. So I guess it will keep doing this until we are not hitting 3.65 volts with cell number 3 anymore. Okay, I've turned off the charger now. And you can see how quickly the voltage goes down of cell number 3. So, cell number 3, if we measure the thin wire only, which is the passive balance wire of the BMS, we can see 110, 120 milliamps. But if we measure the thick one, which is the active balancer connected, we can see 1.78, 1.8 amps. Nice. And they're both working together. So if I measure both cables at the same time, we can see over 2 amps of balance current. That is so cool. Oh, I would say it is already 11:30. We call it a night. Leave the charger connected to the battery, leave the balancer, leave everything connected as it is, and come back after a good night's sleep. Okay? Alright. See you tomorrow morning. And this morning we are still charging with 1.1. Well, good morning by the way. With 100 milliamps. And we can see the balancer here is turning on and off. So we must be around the threshold what we have set in the BMS. So, and having a quick look at the display here, we can see 49, 39, 46, 43. So they're all very close together. And we want to have a quick look at the app here as well. 14.2 volts. And all the cells are at 3.54 volt. And you can see the voltage difference is switching between 2 millivolt and 10 millivolt. And that's why we see the balancer turning off and on. But I would consider this pack as 100% balanced now. Perfect. Yeah, as we know from previous tests with these active balancers, they are working a treat. And this active balancer works particularly well with the BMS now together, as we have just seen here in my testing. And I'm also particularly pleased that we can use the Xiaoxiang app, which we are so familiar with from all the other BMS we have tested here on the channel. So, how does the custom-made JBD BMS now compares to the JK-BMS we all love so much? Well, to be maximum honest here, I like the JBD BMS more. I really like this function of the passive balancer and the active balancer, and we can easily program this all through the same app. We know the active balancer in the JK-BMS works well, but we also know it has a major downside. It can only balance one battery at a time, only one. It only discharges the one with the highest voltage and charges the one with the lowest voltage afterwards. And we have seen the tests here on the channel. When you have more than one cell peaking, even the JK-BMS cannot cope with this anymore. And this is where these balancers actually start shining, because they balance all the batteries at the same time. So they take a bit of energy here, a bit more energy from this cell, and put this all together in this cell. Far more flexible and dynamic. Well, and we also know these can actually balance with 4 to 5 amps if you have a high enough voltage delta. while the JK-BMS does only 2 amps regardless of the voltage difference, which is a bit of a plus actually. Yeah, and then, well, the JK is fairly small, fairly slim, much smaller footprint than the JBD BMS. This is a 200 amp BMS and this is a 250 amp BMS. We've got these thin aluminium plates front and back here, which is all the cooling of the whole BMS. While over here we've got this aluminium front shield and the massive aluminium cooler on the back. And I very much like these terminals with the copper bus bar. So I would trust this one a lot more to carry 250 amps than this one carrying 200 amps. And we have seen the JK-BMS carrying 200 amps and then disconnect, and one of the MOSFETs exploded, right? Well, if you haven't seen the video, I'll link this down below. Look, I'm not going to downplay the JK-BMS here. It's a fantastic BMS. It's one of the best BMS out there. But this JBD Smart BMS here, in combination with the active balancer, I think it's a took better. So no hesitation at all to give this one 4 out of 5 frogs. I'm almost tempted, but as you know, there is no 5 out of 5. But this one comes very close to that. The only small downside of this BMS is, well, it's actually not related to this BMS. The only negative here is that we cannot get this BMS as a 16S version as of yet. It is only available in this configuration, 250 amps, 4S lithium iron phosphate battery, because it is custom made for Muller Energy in Sydney. They basically talked to JBD and said, can you make me a BMS with this functionality? And I'm not sure what the threshold actually is here, so how many BMSs did they have to buy to make this work? So at the moment you can only buy this BMS here directly from Muller Energy in Sydney. But they are shipping worldwide. They've got a free shipping service here in Australia. The BMS comes with 3 years warranty on it, and they have a pretty good customer service. And this is all in one package. So the BMS, the active balancer, the Bluetooth module, the temperature sensors, all these cables for the switch functionality, the wiring harness, and the LCD display. This is all in one package, which I will of course link down below and on my website as well. And I could also negotiate a 5% discount code for you guys until Christmas. So if you want to treat yourself with something nice, get one of the Muller Energy custom-made JBD Smart BMSs, but only for 4S, unfortunately. But this gets me thinking, actually, if we contact Muller Energy and let them know that we are interested in buying a 16S version of this BMS with this active balancing function, and we get like 150, 200 requests or inquiries together, they can probably negotiate a price with JBD again and make this work for us. I mean, me alone, I would order 3 or 4 of them straight away, and I would replace all the BMSs here in the battery shelf. Yeah, make them all the same. Make them the JBD with active balancer. Why not? JK, go home. We've got a new king of the BMS here, the JBD Smart BMS with active balancer for 4 or 5 amps. Are there 4 or 5 amps? 4 amp, 5 amp, 5 amp active balancer. So at the moment this gets my highest recommendation for 4S batteries, of course. Still very good with 8S and 16S batteries, of course. So yeah, it can stay, it doesn't need to go home. As always, guys, I put all the information down under the video and on my website. There's a link everywhere. If you want to get in contact with Muller Energy and order one, all the links are there. 5% off using the Off-Grid Garage, whatever code it will be, it's all linked down below. So if you want to buy one for yourself or for one of your loved ones, I'm sure your wife will appreciate that as a gift for Christmas. And I think this is a great and amazing BMS with the functionality we always wanted. We always wanted something to trigger the active balancer. Here it is. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all your amazing support, for all your generous donations. Thank you very much for that. It definitely keeps this whole show going here. And until the next video, when we do some very interesting tests and experiments here again in the Off-Grid Garage, you stay charged, stay safe, and thanks again for watching. See you then. Bye bye.